I'm excited to be back. It has been a while since I've done one of this exploring perspectives. I always forget the name of my playlist for this, but people who know me knows that this is a place where I sit down with people that I either admire, I find amazing, I find powerful. And today's guest, again, bears no introduction. None of my guests bear introduction. I'd be surprised if people don't know you. They should know you. Sabrina Scott, who is just, in my opinion, really, really phenomenal. You're very powerful. You're very strong. You are very, I was thinking about this today. I thought that all of the women I admire tend to wear red lips. And I thought there's got to be a correlation between how you show up and how you empower and stand in your power and red lipstick. You are a tarot reader. You are, oh my God, you are an author. You are an amazing content creator. You have a podcast. You have so many things, and I will link all of them below. So to briefly, I first came across.
Oh my God, you colored it. I love it.
This book, which I highly recommended before, and I highly recommend again, Witchbody. I came across this first before I got to know you and your content. And this is a graphic book, which, yes, I did color inside.
I love it. Oh my God.
And this is, and it's meant to be colored in. And
Yeah,
it's incredibly
awesome.
therapeutic. But the book in of itself blew my socks off. It just, what surprised me is that you applied the philosophy of phenomenology to just not just witchcraft, but to embodiment of witchcraft, and your references completely. You have Maurice Ponty here. When I saw that, I thought, ooh, I better get to know who she is. So I was very, very impressed. This is one of my top books for anybody who is dabbling in the witchcraft. And this is how I then got familiar with you in terms of your online presence and your content. So, and we'll talk more about, I have your other book. I know you have a journal, but apart from this, let's get into the convo that I want to have today. And the convo is, you, without a doubt, in my opinion, show up on your platform very rooted in your sovereignty. Did you always had it?
That is such a good question. But first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me. I'm so stoked to be here. Like, the admiration is absolutely mutual. So thank you. And like, thank you for the lovely introduction. But in regards to the sovereignty piece, it's a tough question. I feel like my answer would be like yes and no. It's like, I feel like I always had some kind of spark in me, even when I was a little kid who was having a bit of a bad time at home and not necessarily being treated awesome. I think I always kind of knew, like, fuck this, like, I'm the best. And I think a lot of kids do have that spark, and a lot of people do have that spark. I think a lot of that confidence is innate in, I think, most children, not that I'm an expert or anything. And then I think it's often kind of trained or taught out of people. And then so you see a lot of adults kind of trying to come back and find, who am I? Am I worthy? What is my gift to the world? Who am I as a person? All of these things, I think adults are kind of trying to reclaim that childhood spark. So it's very interesting. So it's like, yes, I had it, but I wasn't fully owning it, I think, as a kid. Like, I think I was like very conflicted due to my circumstances, which I think happens to a lot of young girls and young people and folks everywhere. And so I think it has been this journey to kind of prove to myself and everybody that that sense of sovereignty deserves to be happening. And I love this question as a starting point, because you did send me a few kind of little touch points that we'd be chatting about perhaps. And I think a lot of those things that we'll get into later on are kind of linked to this question, right? Of people's discomfort with claiming their own sovereignty, and particularly women. A lot of women have a discomfort with owning their own worthiness, their own beauty, their own intelligence, their own fill in the blank. I'm sure we could make a long list there. And so I think there is a conflictedness that we see specifically with a lot of women, and I'm sure we can get into this, but I don't see that as much with young boys and men. So I think there's something very interesting happening there. So I feel like I always had that little spark, but it's been a lot of effort to kind of make sure that spark didn't just go out and continues to kind of be a fire that's present.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is cultural, which we can also get into, but do you remember the moment and how old you were when you first acknowledge, wait a second, I am worthy, I am powerful, I am the queen? When was that moment for you? Do you remember? And how old you were?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think probably when I was around 13, to be honest with you, like roughly around then. And then roughly around that age, I think I kind of made this decision to become the person I wanted to be, because like there was a gap. Obviously you're 13, you're like a gangly little kid, like you're kind of shy. At least I was a super shy, introverted kid. I kind of looked like a boy. And so I had this vision of what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, who I felt was kind of hiding inside me somewhere. And so over the years, it's been this process of not necessarily a continuous reinvention, but more like coming home to myself in a way and peeling off like the different bits of the onion or whatever other metaphor you want to be using to kind of allow that core to kind of shine from the inside out, to remove all of that safety, the safety net to hide. So I think a lot of people, it's like one mask, another mask, another mask, another mask, another mask. And I do think a big part of accessing this like queen energy, if we can call it that, or divine feminine, or whatever phrasing we all want to use, I think it is a part of that process is allowing these masks or onion layers or whatever to kind of fall off and be able to do that either fearlessly or to feel the fear and to do it anyway. Because I think there often does like there's a sense of loss that accompanies that process often, right? Because when we're playing small, we often get a lot of like benefits from that. We get like more friends, more whatever, more this, more that. And so as we've kind of been discussing, the stronger, confident, feminine energy, goddess energy, queen energy type of feminine presence, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I always find that really interesting. So, and you're right, there's comfort in maintaining status quo. And then the image I get as we let those layers fall off, it's almost as if they tend to, like domino effect, kick down anybody who just can't handle what is being discovered. So this leads me to especially your Instagram platform, where you are very, very present. You show up all of the time with a lot of content. What I noticed about your Instagram platform, and I've been a follower for probably 3 years now, what I noticed is that I noticed there has been an evolution to yourself as a woman, in your relationship to your body, in your relationship to how you show up with your body, in relation to aesthetic. I noticed that feels like you really stepped into embodying who you are completely unapologetically, whether it is through any kind of cosmetic procedures to enhance your body or whatnot. And it's interesting to me that when a woman steps into that acknowledgement that this is for me, this is what makes me happy, this is what I value, this is what I want, this is what I desire, is that other women around, instead of seeing that and being empowered by that, and I'm not talking about necessarily thinking, oh, I have to mimic that, but thinking, wow, how can I be that way in a sense of standing in my power? They become very combative and they become very catty, right? What have you noticed, especially in relationship, how you're showing up with your body and your sensuality and your sexuality?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's tough. Like, I think honestly, due to all of that and the experience I've had with that recently, I've been thinking a lot about how beauty is demonized.
Yeah.
Which sounds counterintuitive. right? Like it sounds like it doesn't make sense, but I'm sure you've probably seen this as well. And we saw this actually to kind of bring it into pop culture with the Barbie movie that just happened, right? Like there was, and I did a podcast episode about this actually, kind of critiquing it, where there was this little speech in that film where the daughter character is like railing on how much Barbie is like evil, represents all these bad things, honestly, because she's just beautiful. And I think we've gotten to this weird place in the culture where, let's say one woman, whether it's Barbie, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's someone else on the street, being beautiful, for some reason, we're in a space where other people feel entitled to kind of project all of their insecurities onto that person. And it's very interesting, right? Because some people have no control over their beauty. They were just born that way, and that's how their genes spat themselves out. And then for other people, there's maybe a combination of that and then intentional cosmetic enhancement. For other people, that might be hair, makeup, clothing choices, all of these different things. So there is an intentionality behind it, and there is like a creative element to it, I think. But it's very interesting to me that instead of just embracing beauty as one of many ways of embodying womanhood or femininity, that right now it is this kind of space where people are, it's like a shadow that people are just dumping into and making that mean something negative about whoever is embodying beauty in whatever way that they're defining it for themselves. And so that has been very shocking to me, because I feel like I've embodied like all of the whole spectrum in a way, you know, like as a kid, I was like a tomboy. So I looked kind of like a boy, you know, I was like a little bit ugly at times as a kid, and I'm totally fine to like admit that. You know, and I've got certain things done to kind of enhance what I have naturally, and then to like diminish other things I didn't quite like. So I've kind of feel like I've experienced like the full breadth of this experience. And what's shocked me about it is that the better looking I got, kind of the more hate I got.
Right.
It was very surprising to me, honestly. I was shocked by this and continue to be shocked by this. But I think it's an opportunity to learn something about the kind of psyche of women today. And I think personally, whenever people have this kind of negative reaction against beauty in some kind of way, that tells us something about what is going on for that person. Like what are they triggered by? And I think we see this with something like beauty, or we see this with success in other types of arenas, where if one person has achieved something, if one person has taken the reins of their life or their being or their body or whatever to usher it into something, whether that's a particular physical embodiment or career success or whatever, people often get upset or triggered or whatever, because that, like, bouncing off of that, it kind of gives them this realization, and it makes them face the fact that they have not done that.
Yeah.
But they could, because so-and-so has done it. And so I think there's that space that is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, that realization of, oh, these excuses that I'm telling myself are maybe not really valid.
What do you think might be potential mind blocks for women who are, because I'm thinking about the space you embody, which is a spiritual space, and you would think that, to me, the first core rule of witchcraft, or even if you don't do witchcraft, but even if you just do tarot and divination, is to be empowered by who you are. Right? And you would think this would be a space where when you see somebody empowering who they are, it would give them an opportunity to actually use that as, look, she's doing it, I can too. What do you think is potential mind block for some women who look at you, and instead of being empowered, they feel disempowered to the point of having a need to actually put you down, to attack you, right? When deep down they really want it.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think, honestly, the root of a lot of bullshit is just insecurity. And that sounds like maybe oversimplified, but I think it's possible to feel secure and to have self-love, even
Mhm.
while having things about ourselves that we want to change or improve. And so I think there's something to be said for loving like every element of the process, like every element of the process, like every, whether that's about anything, like a business plan that's maybe got its ups and downs, or, you know, the little bulge on our stomach, or like the crow's feet on our eyes, or whatever. And it's like, we might want to change that, sure. But I think there's also something to be said for just embracing
Mm.
all of what is. And that was always my own vibe when it comes to something like plastic surgery or whatever, you know. And I was always very clear on this for myself, right? Because I knew it's like, it's not a fix to what's going on internally, really, right? So I got a breast augmentation when I was like 23, saved up for it for like tons of time. So I paid cash, like no payment plan, all good. But I was so like so clear with myself that I was like, I will not get this procedure until I'm absolutely in love with my tiny boobs.
Mm.
I was like, I will not change them until I'm obsessed with them the way they are. Like, I was always very clear with that. And the other cosmetic procedure I got, I guess last year, like I kind of had the same idea. It's like, I'm never going to be doing this from a place of self-critique or self-hate ever. It's from a place of, okay, I love what I've got. What else can I do?
But even if you do make decisions from a place of self-critique, that's still your right.
Mhm.
That's still your prerogative. That's still your. It
Yeah.
may be your personal mistake down the road. It may be your personal risk. It may turn out to be silver lining somewhere there. It's still right. So what
Yeah.
baffles me is that here are people making decision in a moment that they feel is best for them, and yet everybody is so eager to project their value system of what's right or wrong, and especially in
Mhm.
spiritual community, right?
Yeah.
What happened to glamour magic? I want to bring
I
glamour
know,
magic
right?
back.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like that's fallen out of vogue. Like no one talks about glamour magic anymore, really. Like I haven't seen that many people talk about it. Like I'm sure some people do, but it's definitely not as common as it used to be. That's for sure. You know, and I think it's interesting, right? Is talking about making those decisions from like self-critique. I think there's like a lot of different levels of critique. And I think the best way to self-critique is to be able to be like self-loving and self-accepting as we do that.
Right.
What I've seen in the surgery community too is those people who aren't able to do that. It's like they will get a surgery.
Mm,
In my eye, they will look like absolutely flawless. But then they'll post on the surgery groups and be like, oh, I was botched. My surgeon fucked me up. And it's like literally no one would ever draw that conclusion. Like the person looks flawless.
yeah.
Right. And so even with mine, it's like not everything is even. There's like a little blob over here or like whatever. And if I had that mindset of this endless critique, then I would be unhappy. But I
Right.
think because I've been able to incorporate full like radical presence, I suppose,
Mhm.
self-acceptance no matter what, these things don't really bother me. And I think that being able to come at anything from that energy, I think is really important. Like to me, that's like the best energy to move with, in my opinion. And I think when people just are hating on others, whether it's in their head or on the internet, like the
Yeah.
whole people leaving nasty comments thing, I will never really get that.
Me
But
neither.
if I'm gonna try to, I feel like it's likely because they are feeling some sort of lack of control over their own lives. And so
Mhm.
they need to like channel some kind of like decisiveness
Mhm.
towards something to feel superior against someone.
Yeah.
It's very weird to me, but I do think that is like a common thing, unfortunately, that people do. And like interestingly, I think women are the worst with it, which
Oh
I
my
think
God.
is
Yes.
endlessly fascinating to me. It's
What is
like
that? What do you think that is
guys
about?
don't
I've
do
seen
that.
some of your comments, and I've seen women comment on your Instagram about money, beauty, right? You're posting pictures of yourself in what I find to be very beautiful photoshots
Oh,
of
thank
you.
you.
But and let's say I didn't, I'd say, you know what? Whatever, it's her platform, right?
Exactly.
It's her choice. But I find it interesting that it is primarily comes from women, this attack on women. What do you think that is all about? Because that is so common. I hear so many women talk about that.
I think honestly, it boggles my brain a bit. And I find it disappointing that this is the case. Like it fills me with sadness because I feel like it doesn't have to be this way. You know, it really doesn't. But I think women interact on the internet in relation to how they feel about themselves and how secure they am in themselves. And interestingly, I used to be a university professor. I don't know if you know this about me, but it's a thing that I did at one point for a few years. And I noticed that, like, I learned a lot about people when I was teaching in that context, a lot. And I noticed that the women in my classes were kind of split in terms of how they felt about me. The female students who were very confident, loved themselves, had a secure, like, unique identity, they all loved me. But the female students who were like clearly kind of, I don't know, like not fully resolved in who they were the ones that hated my guts. And so there was really no ambivalence. It was like kind of one or the other. And so for me, that was such an interesting learning experience. Just about like observing the psyche of these students and how do they react specifically to a younger female instructor, which was myself. So I was like the youngest female faculty in the department. Everyone else was like in their 60s, the women. And so I found that so interesting. So I do think age kind of plays into it as well. Interestingly, there is like this perceived threat, even though there was no threat. Like, I'm not going to go steal your boyfriend. Like, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I was not actually a threat, but I think a lot of women do feel very easily threatened by the presence of other women.
Yeah, and that's what baffles me though, because I guess it baffles me because I'm basically engaging in the same fallacy they engaged to, which is continuing to see things from my angle, which is for me, when I see somebody like you, there's another YouTuber, Racine, which I adore. I look at women like you and I see something I like. And I bring it in. I bring it into my world. I bring it is how you carry yourself, how you speak up, how you do your makeup, right? I think, oh, that's so cool. I want to try it on, right? So I bring that energy and I draw from that energy. I see that energy is there shining and I think it's great. And I think, okay, well, what do you like about it? How does that sit with you, right? So it's not necessarily mimicking per se, but it's about taking what resonates, right? And leaving the rest that doesn't. So I see you and other women as like, to me, it's inspiration. It's like, oh, she's doing this. That's so fucking great. I wonder, can I do the same thing? Can I show up the same way? Can I deal with haters the same way, right? Versus, oh, you goddamn bitch. I'm going to go ahead and send you a DM that this is not appropriate, that I'm going to unsubscribe. That's another thing, right? I'm going to unsubscribe. It's like, don't need to let me know. Just go for it. So it's very, and again, I'm completing that fallacy, I know, but at the same time, it baffles me, why aren't women looking for others? Which interestingly we do when it comes to self-help book development, which first of all, I think we all lack in self-development, self-help department, something that's always missing from our education system. And we will go and we'll read books written by these huge moguls, huge women in the industry or whatnot, on how to empower yourself and how to, you know, all of those things. And we're comfortable reading those books and we don't go, you fucking bitch. So there's something about depersonalizing when it's on paper, you don't see her. You don't have to hear how she shows up. But when it's something that you have to confront visually, it becomes this instead of this.
It's very, very interesting. Honestly, I got chills as you were speaking about that, as I completely agree with you. And It was so interesting. So I've been to a few like business development conference things, some organized by men and kind of intended for a male audience, and then some organized by women and intended for a female audience. And what shocked me, like literally shocked me, was that the conference organized by and for mostly women, like the first 2 days of a 3-day conference were all about trying to hammer into women's head, you are worthy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they didn't even talk about that at the like men's business conference. It wasn't even a topic. They just kind of assumed that you already knew that. There was kind of this assumption that everyone was going to walk in there being like, yep, ready to go. Like, I know that I'm awesome. Who cares? Like, I'm audacious. I'm going to show up. I deserve to do this because I exist. And the men kind of had this inherent, like, this is what we're doing. Whereas a lot of the women, even their body language, like in the women's conference, they were kind of showing up, like their shoulders were kind of in. They're like trying to like not take up that much space. And
Yeah.
all the speakers were like trying to hammer in, you're worthy, you're worthy, you're worthy. And there is almost no discussion of strategy or marketing or any of those kind of more practical, how do you actually do stuff? And so I find that so interesting that that's kind of this difference that a lot of women do need to kind of be brought up to this point of believing in their own sense of innate worthiness. And so one thing that's really interesting for me as I've kind of been delving into more feminine energy, masculine energy type of stuff and thinking about these energy movements and ways of showing up in a very kind of gendered way, which I know is maybe a little bit spicy and controversial these days, but let's just go with it. But I think one of the interesting things about it for me is that feminine energy is all about, at its best, worthiness due to simply existing.
Yeah.
Whereas when we step into masculine energy as women, it's all about, oh no, I have to do things to be worthy. And I think that's part of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
A big thing I think a lot of women these days need to overcome in order to lead happier lives. And I've noticed that shift in myself too. Like when I was much younger, I was very much like, well, look at all these things I've done. Look at all my books, look at all my awards, look at all my this, look at all my that.
Yeah.
But now whenever I meet someone, like I don't even mention anything about that until maybe the third or fourth time that I meet them. I'm just like, no, like just get to know me, for how my energy shows up. How do you feel in my presence? Like all of these type of things. So I leave that whole bit for later if I even ever bring it up, but I certainly don't lead with it anymore. And so it's a very different way of embodying energy and like calling myself out from my 20s. I was for sure that way.
Yes. The
Okay,
same. Oh God.
I
Yes.
did this, I did that. And it's like, now I will not ever like introduce myself that way to a stranger. Even if I'm at a business networking, like I still probably wouldn't. You know, I would more lead with my energy and that inherent worthiness of I am because I am.
Yeah. That brings, so I totally resonate with that, with taking on so much masculine, doing, producing, right? Making this concrete, look what I did, look at the degree I have, look at the books I read, right? And lead with that in a sense of, this is why I'm worthy to be on par, when deep inside there's this huge void. Men have that void sealed in from get-go because, well, we've been putting them on pedestal forever, right? It's like it's always amazing. I remember my husband one time was walking naked in front of me and I looked at him and I said, you have zero body issues at all? He goes, I said, like, it's not like your body is fucking spectacular, but you have zero issues. And he goes, yeah, I have zero. I said, you're totally comfortable naked, like totally comfortable. Even if you have like a huge pimple in your back, you're totally comfortable missing it. He's like, yeah. And I thought, this is such a contrast, right? I don't blame men, because I think at some point we all started doing it, where we started putting them up and tailoring to them, and right, and elevating them even more, and kind of reducing ourselves to pick me, love me, like me, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And with that comes, you gotta love me, love me, love me. Oh my God, you don't. That's probably because I'm this or that, or this is how I look. And oh my God, whereas they are from the get-go, well, you think that I'm this Prince Charming. So yeah, I think everything about me is amazing, including, this huge pimple I have on my back. You want a picture of it?
Oh my
You know
God,
what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think this is such a good example. And I love that you brought this up. And I think it's an uncomfortable thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, right? Is like the role of women, unfortunately, in upholding these weird systems, right? That a lot of women have started to accept way less.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's a very spicy take these days, but it's true. Like a lot of women's standards are in hell. Like they're like so low that it's shocking to me.
I agree.
And yeah, it's too wild. And I think a lot of women don't have this comfort to receive, right? There's a lot of women don't feel worthy. Going back to this issue of worthiness, a lot of women don't feel worthy to receive anything from men, to have the door be opened, to buy dinner, to do this, to do that. And it's, to me, that is like the root of a lot of these issues.
Yeah, it's to me, it's the alchemy. To me, that's a temperance of relationship, right? How can you be there to embody your feminine energy, where you allow yourself to receive the things, and you allow men to give those things to you, right? And that's where the flow comes in. But going back to the empowerment and sovereignty,
yeah, absolutely.
I noticed, and this is the other women that I interviewed and talked about, there is this pattern that when we step into our own, like, who am I, and show up, I forget social media, but our personal circle of friendships, especially with women, right? It's starts to really suffer. They pull away, they suddenly see you as X, Y, whatever.
Yeah.
What experiences have you had in that department? And
yeah, absolutely. You know what? Like my people I would consider good friends now, it's all people that I knew before I was anybody. And like in one case, like before I even had anything done to how I looked. And like people who knew me, like my best friend, I would say I've known since I was like 19. And like that was before I was anybody. I didn't have any books out. It was just like some random witchy kind of punk rock looking kid. And yeah, it's interesting, right? So for me, it's like, it's made friendship a lot more challenging.
Yes.
Because in order to really maintain friendships, both parties need to be super self-assured, self-confident, and very like grounded and rooted.
Yeah.
And be in that friendship for the right reasons. Because some people, like they see you and they want to like latch on and kind of take you down from the inside, or they just want to like use you or piggyback up on that. And so it's been so interesting to kind of observe and just experience all of these kind of ups and downs, right? And while it hasn't always been easy, that's for sure. Like I'm thankful for the experiences. I feel like it's taught me a lot about human nature and a lot about women. And I think it helps me help women a little bit better that I've had kind of all these experiences. And I think the main takeaway for me though is that for me, it's worth all the loss. It's like whoever fell away, it's like, for me, my sense of peace and confidence and happiness within myself, like regardless of what is going on, all of that is so worth anything that I don't really mind that my circle is smaller, but it's also more genuine.
Yeah. But it makes it more lonely.
Yeah, it is a little bit more lonely, like it is. I'm not going to deny that. But and like there's so many books even for men of like it's lonely at the top, blah blah blah, and it sounds so cheesy.
I was just thinking that it's lonely. Exactly, it's so lonely.
But it's
get
true.
To the top in business especially.
Yeah,
it gets easier because it's less competition per se. Even though I don't believe in competition, because there's only you doing you.
I agree. Yeah,
But Yes, that's the same thing. I want more women like us at the top.
Me too.
I want women to get to the place and to see sisterhood and to see,
Absolutely.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Versus ghost town.
totally.
Where
Totally.
did
And
everybody go?
I agree completely. And I think my thing is like, I genuinely want us all to win. Like,
Yeah,
genuinely. Like, I also don't really believe in competition. So I'm just like, I'm me, you're you.
yeah,
We're just different. And that's beautiful. Like, I really do believe like there's enough abundance in the world for everyone to succeed at whatever it is they want to do. Like, I actually believe that, like, deeply. So I'm really not threatened by anybody pretty much ever.
yeah.
And I think unfortunately that's kind of an uncommon attitude. Like, I think a lot of people are like, no, there's only so much, right? There's only so much like scarce resource.
Oh my God.
And we've
How
got
many
to battle each
clients do
other.
you need, right?
It's
Most people
very
are
hard.
like, I encourage people to always think about when they get competitive, what is your business model and how many clients do you really need to
Mhm.
to do well? Because there's more than plenty to go around. And
Mm,
the way well, I agree, I don't compete either because I think nobody can speak and deliver the way I do because nobody's me. Sure, somebody
exactly.
can talk about this topic differently, but guess what? There'll be audience for the way they speak about the topic, and that's great because those people will not be listening to me anyway.
Yep, absolutely. And like, I think that I love everyone's uniqueness. Like, I love everyone's unique take on things due to their own life experience, due to their own unique like combination of professional experiences. Like, I love that. And I always tell my students, like, I don't want Sabrina clones. Like, I want you guys to come and do your own thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's unique to you. And maybe you're inspired by everything that I've taught you. Love it, but make it your own. Like, do your own thing, be innovative. Like, that's what I want to see in the space, whether it's spiritual space, witchy space, tarot space, like whatever, fill in the blank. Like, I want people to feel confident enough to take up that space and to contribute something completely uniquely themselves. That's what I'm interested in.
I want to totally. I'm like, please just go fucking do your own thing. The world will be so much better you'll be better, I'll be better, your energy will be better. I want to talk about radical honesty, which
Mm,
I think you're a huge, huge, huge supporter of. I know one of your favorite books is on radical honesty.
that book is so good. It's so good.
I have that book because of you. I love that you're constantly reading and you're constantly reading books that are very aimed to challenge yourself, to
Mhm.
challenge your internal shifts. You're constantly reading very different books. I have another book that you've been reading on burnout.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's so, so important to challenge yourself. But in terms of radical honesty, I have witnessed on your platforms that you are what comes across to me as very unafraid to
Mm,
vocalize your
mm,
opinion. You're very good at that in my view, in a sense of you're not pushing your opinion. You're not saying this is the way. You're saying this is
mm.
how I see it. This is how, and I've seen it with the Johnny Depp versus Amber trial, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh
your
yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I've seen this recently with trans kids. So I see this constantly where you are really unafraid to say, this is where I draw the line, this is how I see this, without shuffling it on somebody else's throat.
Mhm.
That's got to be challenging because with that comes that
Yeah.
you're in a boat and you're about to really rock it
Hmm.
in a sense, maybe not for yourself, but for everybody else.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I actually was doing some tarot journaling for myself earlier this morning before we logged on to do this. And the card I pulled for myself today, and the prompt was in my tarot journal, which exists on Amazon, by the way, the card of the day tarot journal. The prompt for today was, what can I learn today? And the card I pulled was the Queen of Wands. And I've been thinking so much lately about fear in
Mm-hmm.
my own work. And I also watched the David Beckham documentary yesterday, and I think it's a must watch for
Yes, me too.
everybody.
A
It's
great documentary.
amazing. It's so good. Even if you don't care about sports, like watch it,
For
especially if
mindset,
you're
just watch for the
passionate.
mindset. Yes.
Yeah, it's so good. And so I think watching that documentary, like pulling this tarot card today, I've been thinking a lot about fear and wondering like where is fear in my career and in my practice and how I show up. Because I think the truth is, and I journaled on this in my little tarot journal earlier, I am still afraid actually.
By the way, it's not a little tarot journal. It's
It's
like a magnum opus. And what I love is when you stack them up next to your publications.
they look cute.
It's all yeah. It's very
They look cute. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I still am afraid. There is still fear in me, honestly. And you know, I think a lot of people do perceive me as fearless or as unapologetic. And I think to some extent that might be true, like on a like objective kind of global scale. But I think internally, it's like I still have like this is just the tip of the iceberg that I've shared, honestly. And then there's all this other stuff that I'm either afraid to say or afraid to share. And I think as I've gotten older, my fear has actually gone up. I think when I was younger and I was nobody, like it was easier to be fearless and unafraid because no one knows who I am.
Yeah.
No one knows who I am. There's nothing at stake. Like, who cares? I'm just some random 20-year-old. So I'm just going to say whatever. Interestingly, that's kind of how I built my platform. And people are like, oh, I agree with this person's hot takes. But now it's like that I have a bigger audience. There's more to lose. First of all, there's a lot more to lose. Like, this is my livelihood. This is like been my work for many years now. It's my only job. So there's that. But there's also, and I have to be very honest with myself too. You're getting like the real talk here, because I don't really say this publicly that often. But it's like there's this fear that's like, there's this kind of like fear embarrassment combination, right? Because I've also been thinking like, you know, I've got all this poetry, for instance, that I've written over the past, like, I don't know, 15 years. Where does it live? Like my laptop. You know what I mean? And I'm like, why haven't I released that yet? Why have I not released a poetry book? I've been wanting to do this for like a long time.
I mean, this is wiser, but yourself, girl. I mean,
I know, right? So it's like, even me, I'm like, I still have this like fear that I'm grappling with that I think I still have to be honest with myself about, you know? And I think part of seeing that documentary, how fearless he was, David Beckham, and doing all of his little things, going here, going there, like putting his whole effort into something, the passion of it, the obsession of it, you know, I'm like, fuck, like I totally used to be like that in my early to mid 20s. But then as you start to kind of gain an audience, it's like, oh shit. And then there's all these other considerations. And so now what I'm grappling with for myself, I'm like giving you the real talk here, like no one knows this, but it's like grappling with that very real fear of what? Fear of loss, fear of audience, fear of being embarrassed, fear of people thinking my poetry will suck, like fear of like saying something too vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I've always, and I've taught on this, interestingly, it's like I actually do feel that if you're afraid, that's a sign that you should do something.
Yes.
Like I feel like that's the sign that like the art needs to go out. The poetry
follows it. I follow it to a T. That's totally.
You know? Yes. That's how I actually feel. And so now I'm like, shit, like now it's my turn again. It hasn't been my turn for a while. You know what I mean? But it's like now that that fear is back, I haven't been afraid for a while. You know what I mean? But now I'm like, oh shit, I am afraid. And so then the fire is now under my ass of like, okay, so am I going to walk my talk? Am I going to release these different things I have to say? Like I've got like a bunch of books in my head, some of which written, some of which not, you know, that are scary. And it's like, okay, I need to now face that fear and put that into the world. And that, I guess my tarot card's calling me out this morning, the Queen of Wands energy. Like that is that, like facing fears, moving with passion, moving with that confidence, and moving with that kind of artistic vision despite fear. So I think it's never about like fearless. I think it's feel the fear and how, in what direction does that fear push you? Because I think that's where we all need to go, is like wherever our fears are telling us like, no, it's too embarrassing, it's too vulnerable, it's too this, it's too that. But I think that's where there is so much beauty and truth. And just like, I think that's what happened. Like, that's where people resonate, because like that deeply personal is actually so universal. And when we try to be universal, we often speak to nobody.
Yes. And I think you just, by sharing your current relationship to that fear, and how as you got bigger, your fear got bigger, which I can totally attest to, because that's just how it rolls. I think you just demonstrated really the crux of what being sovereign and being rooted in your power is. It's not pretending or bullshitting yourself with affirmation, I'm powerful, I'm superior, I'm fearless. It's being able to acknowledge there's things I want to do, there's things I want to produce. And name, I'm afraid of people critiquing me, I'm afraid of people, what are they going to say, I'm afraid of this. And yet recognizing that it's important to me and it's something that I want to do, and moving forward in spite of all of that. That's to me the crux of being powerful.
Oh, I agree completely. Because it's like, it's not really power, is it? It's like if there's nothing at stake.
Yeah. If there's,
You know what I mean? Like
nothing,
maybe it is, but
if there's nothing, and I totally resonate with that too, because it's I'm in a transgender adult field, and anytime I want to show up or create something, I'm just constantly thinking, well, what are people going to say and what are people going to think? And but I agree, when you feel that fear, especially, and the more you feel scared, I always tell people, if you're afraid of moving forward, but yet you find yourself waking up every damn day thinking about it, that's a sign. If you're afraid to move forward and then the next week you forget about it, then that's that, right? So I think that's so important. But I know I promised you to keep it no longer than an hour. I do want to talk about your books. And so as I mentioned, I think is a must. I adore this book, and it's very rare for me to adore a book because I'm such an asshole critic. I have such high bar. I'm, which is my own nemesis, and it's obviously my own projections on the people's writing. But and I picked up queer phenomenology. As a result of I picked up on, oh my God, there's another one. There were numerous books I picked up from the back of you, just for the references alone. This is amazing. I have not read this yet. This is on my to read.
Yay. Well, let me know. Let me know what you think.
Coming up. I did started it. What I love about your writing is I like that you write is very similar, the way you talk and the way you think.
Thank you.
Don't hold back, right? And it's not dumbed down. I feel that's another thing, is sometimes when our intellect grows and we invest in our intellect, there's a lot of times it becomes this discrepancy. So the more intelligent you become, sometimes the more you start feeling like you got to dump it down. You got to talk in a dumbed down way. And then when you do, it's like double-edged sword. You do, people think, well, you're dumb. And then when you talk in more intelligent, people think, well, now you're talking down to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, pick your poison. So I love that. I love the way you write. I really hope you're going to publish your poetry book, because you have a unique way of thinking about tarot, witchcraft, the practice of it, and everything that comes with it. I know you have mega tarot journal. Do you have it to show? It's huge.
I do, actually. Hold on.
It's huge. It's how many pages?
600. I have 2 tarot journals out right now. Okay, hold on.
Wait a second. I thought you only had 1. You have 2?
I have 2 now. Yeah, I released the second one like a week or 2 ago.
What is the difference?
So I'll show you. So this is, and it's kind of like, I've used this one a lot, actually.
I love the black and white. Again, I love when you put all of your books up on a shelf.
Yeah, so I've used this much of it. And then this I still have to fill in. So this one is the card of the day. And so this is meant to be, and I'll show you guys a spread. So the idea is that it's a place to record all your readings. And so I actually used to record all my readings in just like random notebooks. And so I've noticed that I'm actually reading so much more tarot for myself than I used to, just because this makes it so easy and everything's in one place. So I've become like the biggest fan of my own journal, which is kind of hilarious. I did not expect that to happen at all. But I found a lot of tarot journals are just kind of bullshit. Like, not to be an asshole, but, and I'm sure there are some good ones, but like they just all didn't appeal to me. And so I wanted a place to record.
Yeah.
What is the month? What is the moon phase? Like, what is the date? What is going on? How do you feel? What deck is it that you're working with? Like all of that stuff. Because, okay, so I designed this to have 365 pages to actually fill in. So if you actually wanted to do one per day, you could, and it would take you a year to go through. Personally, I'm reading a lot more than that. But if people don't read every day, like I wanted there to be a space for them to notice the patterns and how they're reading. Like, oh, do I only pull cards during the new moon? Do I only pull cards on Wednesdays?
Yeah.
Noticing like their own rhythms of when do I feel drawn to this practice, to notice that stuff. Because I do think it is important actually to notice all of that stuff. So this is like 1 million pages of this. And then the other one is a totally different vibe. But okay, so let me show you. So this is huge. This is 600 pages. So I'll show you the difference in size.
I wonder which one did I see online, because oh my God, girl. Okay, so what, I think it was the first one.
Let me show you. This one is way newer. So this is the Getting to Know the Cards Tarot Journal. So the whole point behind this one is to help create like a book for people to put all of their own reflections on each and every single card. So there's 7 pages for each card of the tarot, which is why this is like a bazillion pages. So this is like everyone's own tarot guidebook. So let me just
like a tarot grimoire.
Yeah, exactly. So for instance, this is the world, which is in the major arcana. So there's like a little graphic on the side here. So first impressions, because I think a lot of people, they waste their time like reading a bazillion tarot books, and then they're always like Googling like, what does this card mean? And then that's how they do their readings. But with this, it's like, no, let's like slow down. Let's look at what we see, which is how I teach tarot in my Tarot Without Bullshit course, which is actually launching, and I'm looking at my calendar, the 24th.
Yeah, so I saw that. I love the name of, that's another thing I saw. I thought that the name is so clever, Tarot Without Bullshit, because it screams to the point, clear, modern, and current, and today.
No bullshit. Because I think, and in the course, I also tell people like throw away your tarot books or like put them under your bed for like a year or two. Just like put them there, because what we want to be doing is learning how to see what is in the card itself and learning the meaning from the card. So my course teaches that in depth, but I would say this is a pretty good complement to the course because it does walk people through. So there's first impressions. Sorry, I'm gonna try to hold this upright, reversed.
Yeah.
When I pull this card, I feel like symbols.
And what I love about this, I talked about this on my tarot channel too, is we all have our inner subjective library in terms of how we see archetypes, right? So there's tarot meanings, and then there's the way, meanings. Yeah, it's the way like Five of Pentacles shows up for me. A lot of times it's tarot and communication, right? For some people, it's all about finances. For some people, it's their body is breaking apart. So
absolutely,
it's really interesting to have that subjective, this is for me how it shows up, because tarot, I feel like the deck will mold and adjust to your inner understanding.
Oh, I could not agree more. And so the whole point behind my Tarot Without Bullshit course is to teach people how to do that. And the way that I phrase it in the course, I call it like building your internal library of meaning. Like that's kind of so like for me, like I love like the moon tarot card like so much that it's tattooed on my arm. But like and so for me, that card represents me when it comes up. Like obviously all the other meanings too, but it's very much like a me card. But for other people, it's gonna mean madness or like stress or all of these other things, right? And so I wanted a place where people can really notice what is going on for me whenever I pull this card. So like for instance, like the pattern I always notice in my own life is if I pull a reversed King of Cups, like the guy usually is like a narcissist or like something something unhealthy, like emotionally unhealthy, like a bad fit, basically, I've noticed whenever I pull that card. So I'll show you guys in just a second, because I know the people are going to be watching, but here is some other stuff.
I love that.
So
I
it's
just love
like,
the simplicity and that you kept it black, stark black and white.
and then this is like, I think the best part. So like, then I would write like,
The
what was the situation? What's the interpretation? Like, when did I do this? So it would be like, oh, so and so, like April 2023, reversed King of Cups turned out to be
yeah.
shiesty. Like noticing all of those patterns. And then so for me, that's happened enough times that like now I know like that archetype of energy is not a vibe. And so I think a part of this, the point behind this whole journal is creating an actual structure for anyone who is learning tarot to like notice those patterns. And often people don't, right? People will write down their reading or do their reading, forget about
Yeah.
it, out of sight, out of mind. So it's like for me, these two, they work really well together. And that's how actually I plan to do it, is go back on all of my readings, put them in here to be like, okay, what new patterns can I notice
Yeah.
about when the cards are coming up for me about what? Because I'm sure there's some patterns that I haven't even noticed yet, because the reading, like I forgot about it, it was so long ago or whatever. So for me, that is like one of the best ways to actually learn what the hell do all these cards mean, is to notice how do they show up in our own lives? Like what is the patterning here? You know, to notice like the energies as they come
I
up.
think it's a must. It's a must because
Yeah.
I see so many people in tarot community who take on other subjective meaning, because we watch content all the time from people. And
Yeah.
somebody will be talking about how the tower is always something huge. Then you take on that meaning in your own reading and you kind of interjected that meaning.
Yeah.
And it's a tower and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. And it isn't
You
always
know,
huge.
and it's not. And
Yeah. That's the thing, is it's not. It
yeah, like
stresses people out.
I noticed in my just daily, if I pull a tower daily, it's small shifts that's going to happen. There's going to be a very something small that's going to change your perspective, nothing huge. And so I learned to see tower differently. So I think that's so, so important to have that.
No, I agree completely. I agree completely. And it is true. Like I think when people take on other people's meanings to such a large degree, that can block their own intuition as well. And then the reading
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily make any sense because they're doing that the weirdness that is not really how to do it, I don't think.
So your closest, your class, not close, your class is starting on October 24th, which is great time. That's when that's when the moon moves to Scorpio.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that. I just
Or
intuitively
no,
chose.
yes, I think it moves into Scorpio because I'm October 20, my birthday is October 25th. So
Oh
I
my
know that I'm
God.
like a day, I'm like early moon, sun Scorpio. So
Love that.
great time to start the class. I know, I don't know if you still have it. I recently noticed you had a class also on women empowerment.
Yeah. So what is it? So it's not exactly women empowerment. It's a class that I taught on. Wait, are you talking about my like feminine energy and surgery one? That
I
one was kind of like one off.
Oh, I think so. Was it one-off class? There was one
Yeah.
on like stepping into your feminine.
Okay, so that one is actually different. So I'm actually, okay, so I'll explain for anyone listening what these two are. So I have my feminine energy and plastic surgery masterclass, which I talk for a really long time about my own experience with cosmetic surgery and also the rituals that I did to make sure that surgery went well. So it's kind of merging the witchcraft and
Ooh,
magic piece with
lemon.
our kind of medical experience and also how I scheduled my surgery in alignment with astrology. So it was like a pretty intense experience, and just also talking about the energetics of that. So for anyone who is interested in embodying feminine energy, if anyone's interested in plastic surgery or even just any kind of medical procedure and how to relate that to
Yeah.
magic and spirituality, it's a really, really good one. And then the other one, which you mentioned, so I did a pre-launch for that in the summer, and then I'm properly launching that in November. So let me just look at my calendar. At the moment, that is launching November 13th. And so I'm calling that one Feminine Energy Without Bullshit. So it's another massive course where there's going to be, just like my Tarot Without Bullshit course, like 20 plus hours of recorded lessons in 10 modules, 10 worksheets. And I go really hard on my worksheets. It's like 100 pages of worksheets. It's like hardcore, and
Yeah.
then an optional group coaching component for 12 live Zooms, just to kind of apply the stuff. And so if anyone listening to this is interested in feminine energy and moving from that masculine energy space into a space of inherent worthiness, which I would say would be a way of embodying feminine energy,
For
which
sure.
in my opinion is like a way better way to exist. Like I find it so much better, honestly. Like, and I've gone through that transformation myself. And so I'll share more about that course when it's actually going to launch. But if anyone listening to this is interested, feel free to send me a hello and I'll give y'all the deets. But it is very much about embracing that feminine energy, because I think it's something that a lot of women demonize or are afraid of, or just think it's like, oh, that's selling out, or that's weird, or I'm taking advantage of people. And it's like, no, it's just learning how to step into this worthiness to
It's
receive.
huge. For me, it
It's
was
huge.
huge to learn that, because without that component, I felt like I had to constantly make things happen, like make more money, right? Get a higher degree, create this, upsell this,
Yep.
to feel solid and worthy. When I finally moved it away and stepped into my feminine worthiness, I could sit, chill on a couch and read a book and know that it's okay not to be
Yep.
constantly. It's almost like such a reduction in your anxiety, because you
Yep.
know that you can show up for yourself when you need to, and you're
Yep.
also learning how to have that balance. So I think it's we're
Absolutely.
not made, we're not built to live the way men live, and I think that's what society also made us do. Society, all these books, right? How to be a bossy bitch, how to be an entrepreneur, and it's basically taking a woman archetype and meshing it with a man and saying,
Yep.
to do this you have to be exactly like a man. But we're not man, we're energetically have different energies, and it's important to
And
have a
different,
balance, but it's
different bodies,
different. It's just,
different bodies.
yeah, it's different everything. I
Yeah.
I can only run on 360 like a man when I am out of my menstrual period and all my levels are going up. But my God, when my egg drops, forget it, forget it. So it's
Totally.
different. Yeah.
It's different. And you know what? I wish I learned this earlier in life. And like, this sounds
Oh,
crazy, but it's like, I was reading, because I'm crazy. I was reading some books on psychopathy recently, and these were
that is
written by
crazy.
neuroscientists. And they were basically explaining, like, why is psychopathy more common in men than in women? Like, what is that about biologically? And there's actually, they explain, like, there's so many reasons biologically why. And I'm not going to get into it now. That's not really what we're talking about. But I had no idea all of this stuff. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah.
even men's hearts are bigger. Like, the way that
Oh,
they process power in the
for
body and
sure.
is different. I'm like, I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
I didn't know this until my 30s. Like, what?
It's,
How
if
is
you're
that even
still
a thing?
interested on a subject,
It's
Snakes
crazy.
Suits is a
Yeah, okay.
book on psychopathy, on how corporate world actually glorified psych,
Yeah,
sociopathic behaviors in individuals, and how it's built to fit how many, there's so many psychopaths in corporate world. It's not even funny. You don't have to be a serial killer to be psychopath. You can be committing white
absolutely.
crime all the time. So it's interesting. The world is actually built, if you have that in you, to elevate it even more. Yeah. Yeah. Oh God.
It's so interesting, but it's just these biological differences I think is fascinating. And one more thing I wanted to say about the feminine energy piece is a lot of people might be like, well, what is the relevance of that to witchcraft and magic? But it's like, is that not part of what magic is all about? Like shifting our energy and having
Yes.
control over our own energetic expression and the way that, not to sound cheesy, but like the way our energy is vibrating, to be able to
Yes.
slip in between. Because like there are some moments where for each of us, like stepping into that masculine energy might be a really useful thing to do. Like if we're in an unsafe situation, or even
For
sometimes
sure.
in business, like it is really good to be able to just tap
Yes.
into that and show up in that way, but also to be able to shift our energy back down to something else when we want to, like to be able to kind of engage in that internal alchemy energetically. That
Yes.
is another form of energy work as well, which is what magic, in my opinion, is all about, right? Like energy work, controlling
Totally.
energy, moving energy, transforming energy. And
Yes.
if we can transform our energy, is that not the big magical act of our lives? I don't know. I think so.
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's important to understand your natural energetic state versus trying to apply templates that doesn't fit you, right?
Mhm.
If we can all step into masculine, but is it really our natural energetic state? No. Men can always step into feminine, but is it always their energetic natural? Maybe for some it is, but for a lot it isn't. And I agree with you. I think that in a witchcraft and in magic, people forget that magic and witchcraft first and foremost internal. It's about
Mhm.
knowing yourself fully and your energies fully before you can actually create externally. And people confuse and they think it's all about external,
Yeah,
but
it's so true.
no, it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And so it's that internal magic that I think is like real. It's more advanced in a way
Yes.
than that external stuff that a lot of people think that magic, that's all that is. Like getting this, getting that, whatever, whatever. And it's like, yeah, magic can do that. But then what's going on in here?
Yeah, the inside is still a void that you have to work on. Oh, I can talk to you, obviously.
We'll have to do this again. This was really
I
fun.
love
I
these
love this.
interviews. And I'm going to put all of Sabrina's information below. You have also podcasts, which I really, really enjoy listening to.
Oh, thank you.
It's great. I love how you sometimes bring up your cats. It's so great. It's almost like envisioning you and you're like, oh, my cat is here meowing in the background. I think it's great. So you have a great podcast. I'll put down all of your where people can get your books, where people can get your tarot journals, and where people can look up the classes you offer and you
Thank
Instagram all of that
you.
information. Because I would be surprised if my viewers don't know you. And if they don't know you, I feel like they ought to know you because I personally, for me, just watching you Instagram alone, forget other stuff, the books and everything else, but just Instagram alone, I have picked up and learned things. And I have picked up and learned how you will share when people are attacking you and you will say, how is this appropriate? How is this okay to attack a woman? And I thought, wow, it's really ballsy how she's showing up for herself. And I thought I need to do more of. So I think you're again you're great. I can sing acolytes all day long. So I'm
Oh,
really really
feeling is
excited.
mutual. Feeling is mutual. I
Uh,
think you're awesome. So
Thank
thank you
you
so
so much for your time. I really really appreciate it and much love to you.
much. Love.